Welcome everyone to another live session, Oscar from StressFit. Thank you guys for being here today. We're here to discuss chapter 6 from this powerful book, Vaster Than Sky, Greater Than Space, What You Are Before You Become. I've just kind of scanned or read through most of the chapter, so it's still fresh in my mind. You don't have to have the book or read any of the chapters. It's still a very powerful book just to pick up at any stage and just to kind of explore the insight. And essentially, Mooji only has one fundamental teaching, which is the pointing to your true essence, pointing to the awareness, pointing to the observer. But there are different staircases if you like to get there. So it doesn't really matter what chapter you begin the book. If you've just joined in on this chapter, it still cultivates the same message, but just expressed in different ways and different perspectives. Thanks, Tanya. I appreciate that. Do you move into your not my dream house. This is my I guess just a nice little townhouse before I move into another house near the beach, which it's going to take 2 years to build. But slowly, it's still not my dream house. My dream house is, I've got quite the picture of my dream house in my head. It'll probably take me 10 years to save up for it, to be honest, if I can manifest it. So it's still visualizing in my subconscious. Welcome, Amanda. Welcome, Lisa. Thanks for being here. Welcome, Debbie. Good morning to you. I'm definitely feeling better. Definitely feeling better. So feeling really, really good and back to my normal self, thank God. And now it's all about health, just getting healthy and staying on top of my immune system, and that is the goal. So let's get straight. Sevilla. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Hello, Susanna. Thank you for being here. We'll get straight into it. So chapter 6, Grace is on your side, page 111. It starts off by saying, it can sometimes seem like the mind tries very hard to stop you from recognizing the light of your own pure consciousness that is already shining as yourself. The mind has made a strong and determined vow. This one shall not get through. So you can be sure that is going to look for any little weakness it can find to stop you from entering that place of oneness that has been called nirvana. So this goes into whenever we come close to finding the truth, the revelation of our awakening through just connecting with the awareness, whenever we come to that sweet spot of presence, and before we enter, there's always like this distraction or this, strong ego mind or some haunting thought or whatever it is. There always seems to be something that is holding us back from truly connecting to the essence within. Now, we go a little bit into this, and there's a story that Mooji describes called A Twig Away from Nirvana. And I'll go into a little bit and then I'll summarize the rest. There was once a man who was beautifully dispassionate, kind, and detached from everything. He was so empty of himself, so quiet that he was almost invisible. He was married and had children whom he loved dearly, but he was not attached to them either. Nothing seemed to bother him, even when he came home from work one day, early one day, and he walked in on his wife having a great time in bed with the milkman. He simply said, "Oh, hello. How are you, dear? I see that you have a friend over. Enjoy, enjoy. Don't let me interrupt you. Shall I perhaps make you both a cup of tea?" He used to say to his wife, "Whatever makes you happy makes me happy." But his wife only thought, "What kind of man is this?" Most men who walk into their wives become furious, or at least feel betrayed. But this one is not worried about anything at all, and so uncomprehending and inappropriate of his true detachment, she said to him, "You are a good person, but I need a real man." And so she left him. Then his children confronted him. "What kind of father are you? Such a strange reaction. You're a terrible father." He responded, "Even the milkman would be a better dad than you," the children told him. He responded to his clear, peaceful way, "Oh, yes, you're probably quite right. I'm not such a good father. Even more infuriated by his continued detachment, his children said, "We don't want anything to do with you." He was now quite alone, but he was so unattached to any particular outcome. He was unbothered by his family's judgments. So he went away and he found himself a monastery where he became deeply content, and he worked there as a Zen monk. He became a Zen monk working in the Zen garden. Now I'll summarize the rest because there's a bit to read. So here's this man that is completely detached from his family, from his wife, and even though, an event that happened that was quite might have been quite traumatic for most men, he was completely detached from the outcome. And his wife left him. He was detached and completely content. His children left him. He was detached, completely content. Nothing affected him. He went into a monastery, started, becoming a monk, and he used to just garden. He used to garden all day, and he took pride in this garden, and he always made it this beautiful, presentation to, broom all the leaves off and, rake the sand and just really cultivate that real Zen garden. Then the devil was so furiated that this man had found nirvana that he told his demons, "What are you doing? Why has this man found samadhi? Why has this man found nirvana? Why aren't you guys doing your job properly?" The devil told the demons, and the demons said, "Well, we've tried everything. We told the milkman to seduce his wife. He didn't care. We influenced his children to leave him. He didn't care. We can't find anything to distract him from nirvana." So he told the demons to go back and find a way to distract this man so he could come back into his ego mind, because their job was not to let any man or woman find nirvana or samadhi. So now the monk is walking through the monastery and he's completely invisible. Like he's so immersed in his own being and his own presence that not most monks don't even recognize that he's even in the monastery, because he's flawless in his movements. So the demons would come back every day looking for a way to find something to distract him, but they'd always come back with the news to the devil saying, "We just can't distract him," until the devil pretty much told them they had one last chance. They had to go there and find a way to distract him. So they just, one day he was meditating at the edge of the mountain, and he had just cleaned his garden and he was sitting there immersed in his meditation, but he didn't have to meditate because he was meditation, because he was always in this meditative state. So all the demons just sat around and watched him and watched him and watched him for hours. And even one demon got too close and started meditating himself. And the other demons had to shake him off and say, "Hey, don't get too close," because of his presence, they could stray into this state of meditation. Then suddenly there was a big gust of wind, right? And the big gust of wind caused the tree to shake, and these leaves and these leaves would then be, flown onto the ground, and then a twig from one of the branches came down as well. So then he got up really, really, really erratic, and went to the garden. He raked it all up, and he raked the twig up, and he just felt really, really unsettled. And then the demons looked at each other and said, "Uh-huh, this is what we got to do." So they went to the tree and they started shaking it and shaking it and shaking it, and all these leaves and twigs went everywhere. And finally, the monk was very unsettled. He was very frustrated, and he kept cleaning, 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 cleaning. And he did not find that level of contentment because there's more and more leaves and twigs on the garden from the demons. That is pretty much a story. And then Mooji goes on to say, "What is your twig?" Meaning, what will bring up a powerful distraction for you? Now, hearing this, you may think, "Oh my God, this is terrible. I will have to be so unattached and so vigilant. I will always need to keep sweeping my inner house." As soon as it becomes clear that the person itself is phenomenal, twig or no twig, it doesn't matter to you. You're not fighting personal battles anymore. However, this doesn't mean that the powerful mind attacks will not come, sometimes even without an apparent twig or a trigger. Nor does it mean that such attacks mean anything in particular. In such a storm should arise, you must bring it into inquiry. Don't so much ask what the trigger is, rather ask for whom does it matter. That's a really important line. Don't ask what the trigger is, rather ask for whom does it matter. Who is the one actually suffering? Because if you inquire deep enough, there is actually no one suffering. Who is the one who is bothered? Who still carries some identity? Because through observation, and when we truly connect with observation, the suffering itself is witnessed. So you cannot be what you witness. If you're witnessing the suffering, well, this is just this energetic storm happening within the vessel. But from a higher level of awareness, you are observing this current of energy. So you cannot be the suffering because you're witnessing the suffering, right? And that's what he means by don't ask what the trigger is, ask whom does it matter, because that will give you a more powerful revelation to then transcend the suffering. That's okay, Sana. Thanks for being here. Who still carries some identity, and be grateful for the opportunity to inquire, for the opportunity to see where the ego is still hiding. Now, remember, life will give you people and circumstances to expose you to parts of yourself where you're not free. Life will give you experiences to expose you to parts of yourself that you haven't recognized where you are amazing. So everything can be a teaching if you have the right perspective. Although this monk was almost completely free, there was still some residual attachment at play. So there was the need for the twig to fall on his garden in order to expose why he was still not completely free. The need to look in this way will be there for as long as we continue to identify personally. But don't ask what the need for inquiry, don't ask for when the need for inquiry will end. As one deepens in understanding, self inquiry becomes a joy and often arises spontaneously. Welcome, Fabre. Thanks for being here. It also does not end in that way that the mind would like, with one reaching some final destination. The inquiry is finished when there is no one left to inquire, as you are beginning to live in the realm of beingness, of pure presence, or when you have at least recognized and acknowledged this reality, your daily functions are increasingly taking place in presence, not personhood. Sometimes the person is like a little shadow that comes in that you know will soon pass. If you don't give personhood so much attention, you're not walking around fretting, I've got to get rid of this person. That kind of self recrimination would again be something personal. The worn out repetia of the mind is seen clearly as nothing at all. So here again, we see Mooji mention the transition from personhood to presence, and this is something that he uses a lot that I resonate with. And the personhood is the personality that we identify with. And when we discover our true essence, the personality will make it very difficult and challenging to truly embody that level of presence any of without any conditioning from the past, just pure presence. There will always be something that will come up, and this is the tug of war, or this is the battle between personhood and presence. But if you don't pay too much attention to personhood, then it will come and go, and it will just fade out rather than trying to really resist it or identify with it. You just simply be open to its transition as you start to connect with what is. Ignoring thought is very powerful, but be careful not to become the ignorer. Don't pick up any identity. Simply ignore thoughts. Just stay empty. This is an easy and direct way. The more difficult way is to be like a monk who is detached from just about everything, but still attached to something. For some beings, the time of refinement is like reversing a glove. The hand is out, but the tips of the gloves fingers are still stuck and you have to squeeze a little to get them out. For a while, consciousness wears the label of seekers, and the seeker's goal is to become presence, the unmixed being. When one sees that the seeker itself is phenomenal, one is in the realm of presence, and presence is not a person. Presence does not subscribe to any particular religion, and it does not require maintenance through the performance of a spiritual practice. From this place of presence, I point you to a deeper reality, yet that even this one is so determined to find those two branches in order to shed the old skin of its phenomenal and not ultimate of its phenomenal of its sorry, I just lost my line. Of where am I? Of itself phenomenal and not ultimately real. So don't assign so much importance to the one who is shedding the skin. Again, he's just highlighting that when you are going through this awakening and you're really discovering your presence, don't get caught up in, I guess, the process of awakening, because that can still hinder your ability to truly embody the presence, because that kind of leaves some foundation for the personality to come back in. When you are discovering and awakening to your truth and really cultivating this state of presence, just be open and don't get caught up in the trap of enlightenment or the transitioning or the journey or anything like that, because that can also hold you back. You can be aware, and this is what he means by, so don't assign so much importance to the one who is shedding the skin, because then the ego can take that, I guess, and be like, okay, I found presence. I'm liberated. And it can really, cleverly disguise itself in that facade where it feels it feels a little bit, the ego feels a little bit more superior through finding presence. So the seeking itself is coming from a psychological state, because presence is a frequency. It is a state that is within your being, and one that transcends any level of, I guess, attainment or how the ego will grasp something and feel like it found it or seeked it or reached it or discovered it, whereas your true presence, there is no actually space for any of that. You just are, and you're just witnessing all the activity. So that can be a trap for some people when they're going through a journey or process of discovering the truth, is when they do come to this level of presence or awakening and they start to become more self-aware, the ego will make them feel a little bit more superior than other people. And I'm not saying everyone goes through that, but I have seen that as in my own interactions, where the ego can cleverly do that, where it's almost like some people think I'm more spiritual than you. So it's very clever, the ego, the way it works, especially being enlightenment can be a massive trap, becoming enlightened, because the ego will definitely use that and then hide itself behind you becoming enlightened. When the truth is you already are enlightened, it's not something you grasp, it's something you expose your attention to. You can be aware of your triggers, shortcomings, and ingrained habits, but when you discover that all is seen, including the involved witness, you need not to work on this one anymore. Again, it's all witnessed in the field of awareness. Once this is grasped, be careful. It is at this right moment that arrogance may come and say, yes, I've done it. And so the person poison slips back in. And this is what I mean by, when we search for something deeper than what is presented to us, or something deeper than our ego mind, and we start to seek. And when we find it, that's a form of ego, because, and not to say it's a good or bad thing, it just means that the seeking itself, is coming from an unstable place, because it's the mind that is seeking nirvana, samadhi, enlightenment, awakening, truth, however you want to look at it. But that activity is being witnessed through the awareness. So that understanding that is a massive revelation, because then there is no seeking. You don't need to seek. You just need to be in your presence. Seeking itself is it can be a role of the ego because you're seeking something outside of yourself when you know the truth and presence is within you, and you are the space that allows everything to manifest, as phenomena in this experience we call life. Good morning, Chris. Thanks for being here, man. Once this is grasped, be careful. I just wrote that. And so the person slips back in, but in your earnestness, sincerity, and dedication to the truth, something is there walking with you, protecting your way. You may not see it visibly, but grace is on your side. It's always here. This is the mighty existence, and the ultimate truth is in each and every one of us. We may say that life has a purpose. It is that of unveiling this truth so as to win oneself back from the state of hypnosis and awaken to the real. The state of hypnosis and awaken to the real. So many of us, we are in a state of hypnosis. I do believe that there's some people living in a that some people even live in a psychosis of their own minds and they're just not aware of it. And there are so many psychological conditions, I believe, that aren't even diagnosed because of the intricacy of the mind and how, complex it is. But when we're living in a hypnosis, and there are a lot of people living in this hypnotic state because the mind is so seductive, thoughts are so seductive. You try and sit there and focus on your breath for 100 counts. I guarantee you, 9 out of 10 people, by the time they get to 60, they'll be distracted and they'll be in thought process. And that's how seductive the mind is. And that's how strong the gravitational pull is to the mind and to thoughts because thinking has become so habitual. You don't have to think anymore, it happens for you. Right, as digestion happens, thinking is happening. You've become you're a master thinker. You're a master thinker, meaning you've graduated and you've got a PhD in thinking, you've become so good at it that you don't even have to think. It just happens for you. So when the mind has such a momentum from decades, and years and years of thinking and identification to thoughts, when you try and sit still and focus on your breath and be aware of body, the energy within the body, the essence, this habitual condition pattern is so strong that the identification is happening unconsciously, right? You're not even thinking about it. And this is where I guess meditation starts because we then have to become aware of that, aware of the feedback loops, and start bringing our attention back into our body, back into our breath, back into our moment, back into our space, so to speak. And this is where it all starts, and the longer you can stay in this space, the weaker the gravitational pull becomes from the mind to take your attention. And we do this more and more, and through the law of repetition we become really good at it. And then over time, it only takes us a very small amount of time to find that inner presence, but it may take a lot of work to get there. So in satsang, in this climate of spiritual grace, the Buddha nature, the Christ light or consciousness is revealed and set free from the illusory imprisonment of psychological identity. Many may our lives be free of the evidence of truth. I'll read that again because it's very powerful. In this climate of spiritual grace, the Buddha nature and Christ light or consciousness is revealed and set free from the illusory imprisonment of psychological identity. And that's what it is. We're so identified with our psychological minds that it has become the very foundation where we extract our identity from, where we kind of perceive reality through is through this personhood, and we believe everything that our mind tells us. And for some of us, we're even haunted by our thoughts and we don't know how to control our thoughts. And it becomes this imprisonment, right? And it's an illusion that we can't see past because we think we're going to live forever. That there's this illusion that until sickness, illness, or the inevitable starts creeping in, we truly, on some level, think we're going to live forever because every day can be very repetitive and we're just kind of going through the motions, right? And again, this is a very hypnotic, seductive state of the mind because in essence, we're not the personality at all. I was watching something today very powerful, and in some cultures, they when they're born, they are born to die, meaning that as soon as they're born, it's a path to death, and death is expansion. So from a very young age, they are waiting to die, and it starts to eliminate the fear of death because the life is journey their life is the journey to death, and death is the expansion of the spirit. The afterlife, it's where we can be more creative, we have more powers, and we have access to more energies for us to be free and liberated. So that is exciting. So when they live, there is absolutely no fear of death, and when someone is close to their death, people come with colors, people are dancing, people are, everyone's happy, and they've got this vibrant music, and there's shamans, and there's people massaging the person on the deathbed, and some of them might even take some jungle medicine, ayahuasca, whatever, peyote, psilocybin, and it's this really nice transition into the next realm. And I really think, for me, that makes a lot of sense, because we look at the Western culture, and people are all sad, and they're in their black suits, and we dig up this body, and we put it in a funeral, and we put it 6 feet down, and it's very depressing. Like, it is a this is another subject. Some people maybe think this subject is a bit dark, but it's like any other subject. And the point is, death shouldn't be feared. It's something that should be embraced, and when it's embraced, we're more free to live, right? Because then it's not something that has to haunt us. It's something that we're very aware of, and it's something that we get excited for. And there are cultures that do that. And I was listening to this today, going, yes, 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 this is the way. This is what I want to do, because I really do resonate with that. Anyway, some food for thought. Backlash of the ego. Okay, so it seems when someone turns their attention towards freedom by questioning their localized or conditioned identity, serious resistance emerges from inside. It could be described as a backlash from the ego. Previously, nothing, not even setbacks or losses, could really shake us so deeply. We would just go on with the usual play of acting, reacting, and interacting, all with the permission of the ego. But now that we have chosen freedom, stiff resistance is likely to be felt. Never does the ego make itself more apparent when you are really onto something and things move beyond the questioning and evaluating stage, so that you are diving deeply into your own self discovering, entering into your heart of truth. It is especially at these auspicious moments the forces are at play, both eternally and externally, that can sabotage your freedom by keeping your attention fixated only on the body mind existence. So here, he goes on to talk about how, again, whenever we come close to this powerful revelation, the ego is right there holding you back. And it's almost like it's a very last attempt to stop you from experiencing your own truth. It's just at the door, and it's going to give you everything it's got, and it's going to try pull you back into personhood. And we've spoken about this a few times, and it is definitely the case. It seems that often, as soon as we recognize our essential being, these forces bubble up to the surface, and they are not soap bubbles, not friendly forces, not happy vibes. So you may find that you start screaming at people, you can't sleep, you're having nightmares, or you're sweating profusely in bed. All seekers, not just followers of Advaita, which is non duality, uh, but seekers in all disciplines will understand what I'm talking about here, because this topic is universal. It doesn't matter what religion you identify with. If an authentic search is emerging in you, it is ultimately going to come to a fight between the ego, between personhood and presence. There's going to become a moment where for you to let go and completely immerse yourself in presence, there's a death of the ego, and without the ego dying, you cannot truly be liberated, right? You just can't have one without the other. And again, we've gone over this, and it's a very powerful subject, is that some people just aren't ready for it because they're too identified with what has been presented to them since birth, which is, their life, their friends, family, just everything that makes up your life, your history, your narrative, your memories. To recognize all that is just an experience that is just that has just gone through you. Life has just moved through you, but you don't own any of that. Well, you can own your memories, right? But it's not really healthy to hold on to any memories. Good memories, of course, if it's going to uplift your being. But when you recognize that it's all part of this experience, but it's not part of your essence, because in essence you're eternal. You're not defined through one lifetime, in my opinion. To only define yourself through one lifetime is a very limiting perspective of your soul, right? Because we are eternal. Energy is eternal. It doesn't die. It only transforms from one form to another. It can't be just defined through one lifetime. We carry a karmic blueprint, maybe, that goes from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. So this avatar is only unique, called Oscar, to this lifetime. So first, if I'm so identified to this avatar, to this story, to this role, to the people that I've met in this life, then it's going to cause me suffering if I attach myself to a degree where I can't let go. And maybe this is why there are entities that hang around, because they can't let go. They're not in peace because they've suddenly died and now they're attached, because there's all these things happening in their life and they don't know how to be liberated. So they may be stuck, so to speak. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but it's interesting. But I do know that to be open, to be peaceful, to let life move through you without attachment, and to embrace every moment full heartedly, is going to bring peace, and is going to allow me to liberate a lot more easier than if I'm entangled to every single person, every single object, all my money, all my materialistic things. If I'm so addicted to my roles and all these things, these are just entanglements. They're just tentacles that are just holding me into, in this very physical domain. So energetically, it's very hard for me to kind of get all my energy and move on, because I'm still very much stuck to the physical. And from one perspective, we change avatars like we change clothes. Just because 100 years seems like a long time, in the grand scheme of things, this is an infinite life. 100 years is like one breath from one angle. It's just like taking one breath. And how many times do you breathe per day, per lifetime? It's a lot. Um, these internal forces will warn you that liberation is the biggest risk you could ever take. Skydiving without a parachute, because it amounts to the ultimate dissolution of the ego. That's powerful. Paradoxically, you are only coming back to what you can never not be. But paradoxically, you are only coming back to what you can never not be, but have been unconscious of up until now. You are not going to become something else. You are going to stop becoming something else. You are just going to stop becoming and rest in your being. And that's where the fight comes in. But facing down these hostile forces is not like mobilizing to go out and fight an enemy. No, your fight is an epic internal struggle against egoic conditioning and the idea of who you have, of who you are. Your self portrait is fighting against its own painter. Your self portrait is fighting against its own painter, but ultimately, the real isn't participating in any fight. The fight is just taking place in a dream, and the fighter is also part of the dream, but the fighter has to win the fight, and only then will the fighter merge with what really is. That which isn't engaged in the fight. That is how the game is played. And you got to remember, the fight is still being witnessed by the all-seeing awareness, metaphorically speaking. In order to help you, I want to share this fundamental pointing. Very often, tremendous resistance will arise right when you come to some defining moment in your life. It will raise its ugly head right when you stand a real chance of breaking the hold of identity and the limitations of your mindset. How will you stand up and face the resistance? You must not give into your mind's tyranny. Psychological resistance is going to come up. I want you to interpret it correctly as a purgative, 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 purgative rather than a failure. Don't try to face it down with a kind of paranoid vigilance. How dare you? You come any further and you will see who's boss. Indeed, what good would such posturing do when the actual situation is more like this? Life in the form of your psychological mind already has the nuts firmly in your hand. So whenever you approach liberation, it squeezes them and you quickly apologize. Okay, okay, we won't go there. Sorry for all that searching for freedom. I've now come to realize that liberation is really not for me, not in this lifetime anyway. Say something like this, and the psychological mind will let you go, and your life will just be okay. And that's how most people live. They're just okay. But I am telling you that you are not here just to survive life. No one is. You are life itself. And at the same time, you are the witness of life. Let your attitude be the one that helps you recognize this. You have the innate power to discern that you have the innate power to discern that a presence is arising within you that is not the mind. The divine is giving you a kiss from within, and even a highly blown kiss from God will be enough to stir you into embarking upon a search for freedom. That kiss will set you free, set your heart on fire. Now, if you're telling me that you have not felt the touch of that kiss, then fine, maybe freedom isn't for you. So carry on. But even a wink from God will kindle the flame of fire that we all need so badly. When the blaze draws near you and you start to feel the heat, know that it's not a kind of flame you cook, you carry on. Rather, this is a fire that one steps into. I say, step into this fire of self discovery. The fire will not burn you, it will burn only what you are not. That's very powerful. The fire will not burn you, it will burn only what you are not. I am encouraging you to take this step into divine fire, but I'm also alerting you to the likelihood that the forces of the psychological mind will snap you right back into place. Fear, desire, attachment, aspiration, transcendence, love, and hatred, all of these are part of the human story, but we also have the potential to transcend all of these. Transcendence means realize your innate divinity, but it's not easy. Why not? Because it's far too simple for the human mind. Why? Because you are already that. We have to imagine everything else, but your true self is not imagination. We have to imagine everything else, but your true self is not imagination. You may have to create and construct everything else, but you cannot create the self because it is already here. We human beings are addicted to imagination, projection, and judgment. We may call the moment that our identification with the body and the personality came online the fall from grace. But it was truly a mistake because we were intended to fall. You were intended to experience the mechanism of the human instrument and to taste diversity because all of it is divine. You must know that you were not born to remain stuck in your own self portrait, but to awaken to the original being. However, as soon as we become identified as persons, it is though the narcotics of existence had been infused into the beingness, and we started believing in that kick. It's a bit like the way someone who drinks speaks under the influence of alcohol talks alcohol, or someone who smokes a spliff will have a different vibe yet again. Everything has its effect, and if you take it, you speak through it, and it speaks through you. And so that when we kick the habit of living a self portrait, we, as the original being, are blissful, and bliss speaks through us. So, what is this natural high, and what is its effect? It is that which is dependent upon, it is that which is not dependent upon anything else. It is just you. And you are not you as your dreams and fascinations would have you, just that as it is. That is what we are here to find out. That is what's on offer here, the opportunity to look inward and find that as your very own being. Wow, it's a lot, very long chapter, very long, sub chapter. So there's a lot to process there. And it all goes into, the backlash of the ego, you know. Just let me just find this page. Um, so Mooji is really highlighting that, you know, his mission, his teachings all point to the same thing. You know, if you watch his videos or if you've had the privilege to go see him in real life, his message isn't different from one satsang to the next satsang. It's always the same message, which is to point you to the truth of your existence, to the truth of the self, to the truth of the essence through awareness, through presence. But if we're not ready to take this step, if we're not ready to truly embark on this journey to find presence, then there's always going to be the personality, personhood holding us back, because at that point where you're truly, there's going to come a point where you truly have to dive in and really embody your presence. And that is to let go of all the conditioning of the mind and accept your true identity to be the oneness, the spaciousness, that which allows all activity to manifest in. When we truly recognize that, then we recognize we're just a projection. We're just a projection. Oscar is just a projection of the mind. I'm just a projection. I can't be the projection. That is an illusion, because a projection is coming from a projector, right? There's a deeper reality that all this is being projected from. And if I've limited my consciousness to only identify with the physical, then I've limited my experience only to the physical, when really, in essence, there is a deeper reality where it's all being witnessed from. If we don't recognize the deeper reality, we can get caught up in this reality to the extent that we are not ready to let go and be liberated. And maybe this is why we keep coming back lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, if you look at it from a reincarnation perspective, to really find that truth within us, because we just are so attached to personhood. And where we are going, personhood is it's only it's not it's at one vibrational level. To truly be an energy, and to be free as in an energetic form, I'm sure it takes a different vibrational state. But to achieve these different vibrational states, you don't have to, but I think it is wise to really embody the presence and energy within yourself. And this goes back to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, because the ones that transform and heal and have these amazing, profound, mystical experiences are the ones that can connect with the truth of their being, independent to any sort of psychological form or conditioning. They walk into the 0 point field, or they walk into the quantum field as a nobody, as no one, as no thing, nowhere. So there's no narrative, there's no history, there's no projection, there's no identity, there's no gender, there's no resistance. There is just nothingness. You have to become nothingness to enter source. If I try and enter as Oscar, it's not going to happen, because Oscar is a physical being. You can't enter an energetic form, an energetic domain as a physical being. It just doesn't work. The frequencies are completely different. If I want to enter this energetic domain where it's pure potential, and the source of where, I guess, we truly reside, where our essence truly resides in, is to enter as consciousness, pure awareness, infinite awareness. And when we can really raise our vibration and frequency just to be energy, then we can access this realm. And when we access this realm, it's like the metaphor that I love. It's the raindrop emerging with the ocean. When we believe we're the raindrop, we're living in separation. We're living in the illusion of me and you are separate, and that's the illusion that creates this anxiety that I'm alone. I need someone. And it creates all these other desires and earnings that kind of fill this void because we haven't recognized that we are the ocean. We are the ocean. You can't get a handful of water and drop it and try and say that each droplet of water is different to the other droplet of water. You can't. All the droplets of water are the same. All the rain is the same. It's all emerging with the ocean, and we are all droplets of water of the same ocean, individualized by our own nervous system, conditioned by our own minds, filtered through our own experiences, but ultimately, inevitably becoming self aware of consciousness itself, which is allowing this phenomena to take place. But when we believe we're the body, we're limiting consciousness to the physical experience, and we can't access these realms or these vibrational states in this lifetime anyway as physical beings. But we have the power through meditation, through breath work, fasting, and chanting, and I'm sure other different types of methods to change our frequency, right? And sometimes we really need to make peace with the past. We have to make peace with a lot of things to liberate a lot of entanglements we have in the body. Because throughout our lives, we go through shit, and then we create bonds with the past, and we create bonds, unhealthy, energetic bonds with people from the past, places, events, from trauma, and it entangles our energy. And then we're trying to access this, new self. We're trying to access our full potential, but there's parts of ourselves, there's parts of our being that are still, entangled with past experiences that have maybe traumatized us, or have maybe left some sort of, unhealthy connection with. And this is why, through breath work, through breathing, through different modalities of healing, we can start to get that energy back and start to rejuvenate, recharge. But ultimately, you can just in one moment of just being presence and really just connecting with your being. And if you, the more, and this is just my opinion, I'm not saying I'm right, the more pain and suffering you have when you try and become present. If just say if my pain and suffering is at a 70%, because 70% of my life I've suffered. When I try and meditate and reach this state of presence, there's going to be 70% of shit that I have to work through to discover that present state. So there's going to be a lot of anxieties. There's going to be a lot of unsettled energy. There's going to be a lot of stress. There's going to be a lot of shit that's going to come up. But if I can just stay present and just breathe and not identify with the narrative, because it's the narrative that's going to really start to recharge these emotions. And then it's going to associate that with a memory, and the memory is going to come up, and you're going to be like, oh, well, and you fall back into the ego mind. And I'm not saying it may be justified. I'm not talking about what's happened. I'm just talking about the mechanism. If you can just sit there and just be present, your body will naturally burp out this shit, this unsettled energy, this unwanted energy. It'll start to flush it out because you're becoming present, you're introspecting, you're going into your body, and slowly through breathing, it'll start to surface. Because the more present you become, it starts to collapse the past and the future, and everything that you've been holding on to will start to surface, right? Because you're not going to reach a complete state of presence while all this trauma and all this suffering is there, because these are emotional barriers you're going to have to work through. But through just absolute awareness and presence, and just understanding that you're witnessing all these currents of energy coming up, you'll start to flush this out of your body. And the more you do this, the more you weaken the charge with the feedback loops that govern your behaviors and moods from past emotional patterns and past emotional wounds. And you become more awareness, then you become the programs, and you just start becoming aware and aware and aware and aware, and you just start breathing. And over time, once you discover that presence and you're unaffected by anything that the mind is throwing at you, like your psychological mind cannot penetrate your being now because you found such a deep state of presence, then then you've become unlimited, you become invincible, because you've really truly transcended the physical, and you've really transcended the analytical, and you've transcended the subconscious, and you've come into a pure state of awareness. And in that state, there's just pure potential, and it's the metamorphosis of going from a physical being to an energetic being. And I think that is transformation, at its best, in my opinion. Moving along, page. I think we just read that you may want to create. You may have to create and construct everything else, but you can't create the self because you already are the self. The guidance of a master. So then, on page 122, as long as we remain in a state of being independent persons and believe, this is me, this is my body, this is my life, I am doing my own thing. I meditate. I'm Christian. I'm Jewish. I'm Buddhist. It is helpful to find a guide who has already traveled down the path to freedom, one who knows all the pitfalls and that can take us the most direct way home. Although we can refer to our spiritual endeavors as a path or a journey, I am referring to the most direct way to the recognition of your own true self, as opposed to the most direct way to travel. In order to embark upon a journey, one must be trying to get somewhere other than where one already is. If I were to accept the idea of the journey, it would only be the journey to get your mind or attention back to the source, which is always right here. If you were to really feel that there is still some distance to cover to be who you are, the vehicle would the vehicle the vehicle would the vehicle would sorry, I just lost my page. What vehicle would you need in order to come home to your own self or heart? Is there really any distance at all between you and your heart, except for the distance of a mere thought? Ideas of such separation are nonsense that we have embraced as truth. But at what cost? The master wastes no time in cutting away not merely the potential, but also the capacity of abiding anywhere else except but its own heart. Most seekers still harbor a conviction that they must perform some strenuous tasks, undergo ordeals, or undertake an arduous journey. It is the master's job to discern whether the seeker's mind is fit for direct recognition of the truth, or whether further thawing away from rigid conceptual blocks is necessary. The relationship with an authentic spiritual master enriches the mind with real understanding. In the beginning, it may not be so easy to overcome the mind's power of suggestion, but with determination, earnestness, and grace, you are bound to succeed. If you persist with courage, trust, and firm faith in the master's instructions and directions, nothing will prevent you from attaining your goal. You may ask, what if I were to become attached to the master? Well, we've been attached to so many things in life that aren't real. If you were going to become attached to one who is free from attachments, this one will break you from your own attachments. From that, we become freedom itself. See you, Tanya. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll go, there's a little story that he goes into. I won't read about squirrels, a nice metaphor. And we'll end it off with one last page called "Bursting from the Cocoon." After meeting my master Papa G and sitting in satsang for some time, there was one intense experience which I became very angry at him. I had written to Papa G a letter that read out loud in satsang. Up until that point, I had felt that mine was a state of loving serenity, and that I was already a good way along in my spiritual development. But when I sat in front of him and he began to read my letter out loud, something began to thump in my head. The thumping sound climaxed into a high-pitched ringing inside my ears, and everything started to wobble. I was fuming. He had caught a hold of something inside of me that I had never felt before, and he wasn't letting go, while in fact he was doing nothing at all. He wasn't making it easy for me to ignore what he was pointing to, but I was not prepared to look. A huge resistance arose within me. What followed was a sort of cutting off from my surroundings. The inner noise became so loud that I actually couldn't hear him speak. I was just looking at his mouth moving, and the entire room was roaring with laughter. But inside, I couldn't actually hear them. I only heard continuous screech, and then I decided in that very moment, in that time, had come to get out of the Sadgar group. And sorry, and then but inside I couldn't actually hear him, blah blah blah. And then I decided in that very moment, that time was here to get out of the Sangha group and out of the Lakahau for good. That must be the area he was talking about, where he had the satsang. In my mind, luck now had become bad luck now. A wave of humiliation and anger arose and came down with a crashing weight of judgment. And I said to myself, how dare he make light of my question? And the nerve of the Sangha to laugh at me like that, I must get out of here now. He was not my master. He's not Ramana. Look, he's not Ramana. Look, it's all Westerners here, and the Indians don't even come. So Mooji is sitting there playing this narrative why he had to get out of there because he felt humiliated from Papaji bringing him up and making a little bit of a joke out of his letter. It was a hot day. I tried packing my bags, but my body was dripping in sweat from both the outer and inner heat. I decided to go for a walk and get some much needed air and found a spot under an old banyan tree in the center of Indriya Nagar. But my mind was still on fire. I thought, if I'm going to leave town, I need to get moving. I got my feet and I started to walk in the direction of home. What came next was really indescribable. I must have walked over 30 yards so suddenly and unexpectedly, everything vanished, including myself. It was as if I had fallen through a hole in the universe. Time stopped. No reference for myself existed. Nothing. I looked at my hands for a sense of me, but they were empty. There was no memory, no flavor, no any context for an identity, just vastness and some sort of non-experience. Or perhaps it could be said a kind of feelingless feeling. However, something was there to notice the absence of those familiar reference points, and it did not feel as if anything was lacking. Rather, I was experiencing immensity itself, an indescribable vastness without boundaries. And then within that expansiveness, a great love toward Papaji arose. And it was only in that moment that he actually became my master inside my heart. Until then, he had always been my guru, but not my guru. Until then he had been a guru, but not my guru. Sometimes resistance of this sometimes resistance of this magnitude may come up as anger. At other times, you might just feel disorientated because you cannot find yourself, your life, or your references. Also, some fears may present themselves by whining in your ear. How can I continue on like this? But all of this fear is only the stench of the mind's burp. Satsang is so powerful. It is a powerful antidote to this agitated dream state, and it is an opportunity to come home to your own true self. You have been living as a caterpillar, you have been living as a caterpillar, but one with a deep inward orientation. But you went inside and then poof, suddenly you are a butterfly. This is the metamorphosis. But your first reaction, where's my leaf? Where's my leaf? You can even try to keep moving like a caterpillar, but now you are flying and you find that crawling is no longer you. Leave such thinking about your life. Leave such thinking about what your life is or isn't aside entirely. Don't forecast what you believe or project is going to happen. Just be present in life's unfolding. Something is still capable of carrying this body mind experience as it always has been carried. The difference is now you know that life force is an animating power driving the body mind functioning. It is the consciousness present in the body that gives it life and simultaneously observes all the fluctuations dispassionately. Now you can also understand the undue importance has been attributed to the ego and to the mind, and you can discern the truth, and love encompasses everything. This is the greatness of your consciousness that we all are. So you don't have to direct consciousness because human beings are not the controllers or creators of consciousness. We are living embodiment. We are the living embodiment and expression of consciousness, appearing as personal and independent doer of actions and thinker of thoughts. Relinquishing the sense of control is a sign of you becoming more intuitive, more spontaneous, a sign of self, a sign, a sign that pure self-knowledge is blossoming inside you. But you are not going to learn in the traditional way by studying books or classifying what you observe. Instead, this knowledge you spontaneously generate waves of illumination within you. You are coming into the recognition of your real place as a immutable awareness. As true understanding dawns, you finally get to taste the sweet fruits of the bright, expansive awareness of your real nature. You are the state of grace of discovering, not of creating. Enjoy. Fully open your mind and heart to the call of the arising presence of the Supreme. Thanks, Derek, man. Thank you. I'll see you on the next live. Have a nice day. Um, and that's it for chapter 6. And it's just such a beautiful chapter. Just Mooji's perspectives and insights all point, and it's so profound that how complex his teaching is, but it's so simple. The simplicity is just to be in awareness and don't touch anything at all. Thanks, Derek, man. Just don't touch for a moment. Just be here and don't touch anything at all. Let your senses be aware, but don't engage in any information coming in. Let your thoughts be there, but don't identify with any thoughts. Let your feelings surface, but don't shower in them. Don't resist them. Don't identify with them. Just allow them to be. Life will pass you by. The moment will move through you. The experience will pull you into its magic. And things will start to unfold, and you don't have to be so invested in everything. You can just observe quietly in your being, breathe, and just be in that natural essence of who you truly are, which is consciousness, which is the openness, which is the ether, the witness, the perceiver, the observer, the one that measures all, the one that gives stage to life. Without your consciousness, life just would not take place. It needs a stage, and that stage is your consciousness. Every single object is objective to the subject, right? It's an objective reality, but the objective reality needs a subject. You are the subject. And as you go deeper into your self-discovery, even the subject can be witnessed, right? You go from being someone to no one to everyone. And this is the journey of consciousness. We are all conscious beings. We have this power to measure reality through the observer effect. Through the act of observation, we are collapsing the wave function into the one condensed reality, which we call life. The deeper we look into life, the more mystical it is and the more mysterious it is. And we still can't figure out today, even with all our sophisticated instruments, what reality is. We just don't know. And that is the absolute mystery of life. But what we do know is that for us to navigate through this experience peacefully, it is wise to observe rather than identify, because when we observe, we more content within our own beings, because we're not emotionally investing in every single variable of life, every single equation. And it's okay if you do that. There's no right or wrong. There's no this way or that way. It's just your own journey. But having peace in your heart is what's going to allow you to really enjoy life, right? Because if you don't have peace in your heart, then you may be a bit unsettled, and that unsettlement can create anxiety, and anxiety can create suffering, and suffering can lead to all sorts of other conditions, and it can really stop you from being your full potential. But meditation, mindfulness, self-development, it's $1 billion industry. It's a big industry, because now more than ever we recognize the relevance of how essential it is to come back to our source. People are starting to awaken, people are starting to become more aware, people are starting to recognize that living these lives, you wake up, go to work, come home, go to bed, and you do it all over again every single day, and you might just get the weekend off. It's just not the meaning of life. Can be a great life, but it's just not what I would call freedom, right? And to find freedom in your heart, and to really just allow life to unfold and just develop your own energy and increase your own vibration is going to allow you to share your light with everyone else. And I think that is just a beautiful and powerful gift that we can do, is to share our light with the world. So if there's anything holding you back, recognize that you are the witness, you are the observer, you are not the sufferer, you are not the anxiety, you are not the depression, you're not the sadness. There is a higher level of consciousness that is witnessing all these feelings and sensations and activities in your own experience, in your own field, that you unconsciously have manifested as an experience, and maybe locked yourself in that vibrational state which you are so identified with, which you can't break free from, because of the identification, which is creating, this entanglement and this relationship, which is programming on a neurological level, which is programming on a biological level, and all these things are happening because your belief and identification with this state. But once you start to transcend, and once you start to become aware, it just starts to then just the illusion starts to fade, because the more energy you can become, the quicker you will reset back to your original blueprint, is through energy, because energy is the most powerful creative way of transformation and connecting to what already is. It's not some magic pill, it's not sitting in a retreat, it's not chanting all day long. It's just becoming energy, and taking the word, or going beyond the word of meditation. What are you really doing? You're just kind of sitting there comfortably. Well, maybe the lotus might not be comfortable when you first start off, but the aim is to sit there with good posture, close your eyes, and what are you doing? You're just kind of breathing. And as you're breathing, you're introspecting your attention, or you're channeling your attention to go within, because your attention's always outside of you, identifying with everything. So now you're bringing your attention in, and you're breathing. And in that experience, for you to retreat back to your inner sanctuary and experience the blissfulness of your own solace, there is all these barriers that come up. There's an agitated mind, there's restlessness, there's anxiety, there's stuff. And this is what we got to work through. This is what we got to cleanse. And if you just sit still for long enough and just breathe, and be okay to just breathe, it's not some secret magical gymnastic trick. That is just the most potent level of meditation, is just to breathe and just sit with your breath and be okay. And do that for long enough, and you'll start to see some amazing transformations, I believe, but I could be wrong. Thank you guys. That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this session. I really appreciate everyone that dropped in to be part of chapter 6 of such a beautiful and powerful book, Vaster Than Sky, Greater Than Space. And we'll do a meditation this week to complement the teachings of Mooji. So I'll publish all the meditations for this week. And yeah, just want to thank everyone for being here and just allowing me to cover this book. Really appreciate you guys. And if you're new to the channel and you resonate with the work, please subscribe to the channel and be up to date with all our lives. Other than that, you can join our group to connect with some beautiful members that support each other's self-development and growth. If you're looking to go deeper into your own self-development, I've got some really, really powerful courses. The latest one, thank you, Monica. The latest one is called Reprogram Your Breath. Very powerful course, not easy for anyone that wants to go deeper into breathing and just kind of, reprogram their breath to become longer, slower, and more deeper, because too often we breathe through the chest, which keeps us in this emergency state because that's part of the flight or fight response. But try this course out. It is not easy, but if you can get through it, I can guarantee you it's a serious biohack to good health. Apart from that, thank you guys. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Sana. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. I really had a good time, and I'll see you guys back Tuesday or Wednesday to do some breath work and meditation. And until then, stay blessed, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye bye for now.